Hari Om. Om Namo Narayanaaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Sadasiva Samadhanam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Swaracharya Priyantam Vande Guruvakaram Narayana Samanam Acharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Priyantam Vande Guruvakaram Naham Karta Hari Karta Tat Puja Pravachakiram Yadyat Karma Karomi Tattvakiram Shambho Devanayam Sarvajana Siddhanta Gocharam Samagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Sadgurum Nantosmya. So, this is Mangalacharan in Viruchidana. Adi Shankara says Sarvajana Siddhanta Gocharam Samagocharam. It is avoidable, incomprehensible, can be learnt, can be grasped by the grace of Gurudev. So, we offer our prayers to Gurudeva that may he enable our this little Jnani Yagna to proceed further through the instrument of different dialogues appearing in different scriptures. We have been trying to understand the supreme reality, Atma Tattva or Brahma Tattva. So, I thought I should have written something before I start today's thing. That's it, right? I'll just write something and then we'll start. I think this is all known to all of you, but just to make our little understanding a little more explicit, I think we can start with this here. So all the Upanishads, all the scriptures, we want to understand the nature of supreme reality, which you call it as a Brahman. You can also call it as a Brahman. You can also call it as a Atman. It is unmanifest. It is unconditioned. It is absolute. It has got no attributes. It's also called as a Nirakara. So it has got no attributes, it has got no form. That's the destination, that's the goal from which the whole creation has occurred by a process called involution. Involution of spirit into matter. Involution of spirit into matter. And the entire spiritual sadhana is a reverse journey. That is from man to Godhead, or from manifest to unmanifest, from Saguna to Nirguna. So our entire journey is this. But where are we placed and who are we? What's the creation? So if you consider this Param Brahman, supreme reality, when it associates with its own mysterious imponderable power called Maya. It becomes Ishvara. And that also is very dense called Avyakta, correct? But then this is the Samasti causal body, we can call it. Samasti causal body. That's the cause of everything to come into being. Because the Brahman unites with his own power. Maya is dependent upon Brahman. Brahman is independent of Maya, on its own power. But they say that both stay together, and just like they are the two ends of the two threads. And Swamiji, in one of his books, he says, they are different without distinction. It's a beautiful word, like, You may say they are different, they are distinct without difference. They are distinct without difference. So there is a distinction between the two, but in essence they are not different. So they appear distinct, but they are one in essence. Both Brahman and Maya like that. So it is part inseparable from that. So that is how Ishvara comes when the Brahman and Maya function together. And that is called as Samasti Karan Sharira. There is no Sharira actually. But because it is the cause, we call it as Samasti Karan Sharira. There is no matter like that, but because it is the cause, ignorance. So what we call as Maya, at Samasti level, the whole creation. At individual level, what do we call it? Agyan. So Agyan and Maya are in a way not very different words. What is taken at Samasti level is Maya, responsible for the whole creation. And what is responsible for this individual creation, that is called as the Agyan. Sometimes also called Avidya, but Agyan is the right word. And that is called as the Prajna. So, Mandukya and other Upanishad, they deal more with the Yasti and not with the Samasti. So, whenever the soul, the Atman that we are, identifies itself, with that causal body, ignorance, and that is called as a Prajna. Where do we find this state? Atman as a Prajna, when do we find it? In the deep sleep. So it is called as undifferentiated state. It is called as I hope you understand what is undifferentiated, correct? If you know science, many of you are aware of what is called as a stem cell. Correct? You know what is stem cell? Stem cell is the most fundamental cell in our human body, and it can transform itself into any kind of cell. It can become red blood cell, white blood cell, muscle cell, brain cell, whatever organ requires the generation of cell, it can come from this stem cell. So, this is called undifferentiated or Avyakta, and it can transform, it can express into different forms. So, at the Samasti level, what we call as Ishvara, and at the individual level, what we call as a Prajna. So, whenever the Atman that we are, the consciousness that we are, we identify with that ignorance, with the causal body, then we are called as a Prajna, which is similar to Ishvara. It can manifest into any form. That's the potential. So potential form, it can transform into any form. Now we come from the causal body to subtle body. Causal body to subtle body. So at a Samasti level, subtle body is there. And that is called as a Mata Ishva, they call, or Brahma as we call it. Okay? So this is the first creation. This is the first creation. So from the spirit we have now come to matter. The first existence is there. There is Samasti, Sukshma Sharir, and that is called as a Brahma. Today we just want to discuss something about the dialogue from the Prasna Upanishad. So there the whole thing comes, that the 6 disciples go to Brahma, and then they put some questions like that, So in that we thought, they go to Rishi, but I thought let me just put this particular background. So he explains how the whole creation took place, and then it expressed, that the Brahma is there, and it thought that, it wants to transform. It has, God assigned the task of procreation, creation and Srishti, so it various names and forms. And so, it is Brahma or the Hiranyagarbha which created two principles. Which created the whole universe. Which are those two principles? Have you heard about that? One is called as a prana and one is called as a rai, R-A-Y. One is called as a prana and one is called as a rai. So, because when you want to create the creation, you want a material substance, also matter, and that within that matter, life also has to be infused. In Bhagavad Gita, the 7th chapter, we find Para-Prakriti and Apara-Prakriti. So the Para-Prakriti refers to prana. Para-Prakriti refers to prana. And Apara-Prakriti refers to matter. So here it is called as a prana and rai. So that is the life force is prana. Life force is prana. And rai is the matter. Rai is the matter. Now matter is also of two types. Subtle matter and gross matter. What is subtle matter, you know? Subtle matter is made up of 5 subtle Mahabhuta, which is also called as a Tanmatra. Also called as a Tanmatra. So from the 5 Sukshma Mahabhuta or the Tanmatra, subtle world has come. What do we have as a part of subtle body? Mind we call. All 19 tattvas that you studied. This Pancha Prana, 5 prana, and this Upanishad talks more about that prana. Then 5 Karmendriyas, senses of action, 5 Jnanendriya, senses of knowledge. I hope you also have the clarity that when you say this I, is this a Jnanendriya? I that we see? No. Then the power that confers this I to see, that is actually Jnanendriya. Right? Because when a body dies, all the organs will go away. Part of the eye is donated also, right? But the power that is conferred to the Indriya is Jnana. This is called the Golak, place where the Indriyas live. So 5 Jnanendriyas, 5 Karmendriyas, Pancha Prana and Antapran Tattva is called as a subtle body. Right? So that subtle body will come from where? Sukshma Mahabhuta. And the Hiranyagarbha is there. This Samashti subtle body at the individual level, that is called as a Tejas. So when do we experience that? In dream as well as it will be there in waking state, correct? Because Antahkarana is working even in waking state also. But at that time the other things also, gross body is also there. But in the case of dream, gross body is not there. So only subtle body is there. So it creates its own world, enjoys the whole world and merges into that. So that is basically called the Tejas. So the Atman, which is our Swarupa, which is the indweller, which is the Antaryami, when it identifies itself, identifies means Tadatma, it feels as one with the subtle body. At that time the Atman is called as a Tejas. It is called as a Tejas. And again, from these 5 subtle bodies, 5 gross Mahabhuta came into being. Panch Mahabhuta, as we are called, Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Jad and Prithvi. And I think in you are already studying Tattva, so you must have studied this quintuplication, Panchikaran process, how that subtle comes to gross. And the entire material world that we see, physical world which we can see, is comprising of Panch Mahabhuta. So here it is all about this subtle body, and when it comes to gross body, the individual gross body that is we have, when we identify ourselves with this gross body, the Atman is called as Vishwa. Atman is called as a Vishwa. And sometimes Mahapurushas say identify ourselves with the whole universe. Virat, Samasta says the whole universe belongs to you. You are not just confined to this body. So when the soul identifies itself with gross universe, at that time it is called as a YVFAcourse. Okay? So that's the whole thing. And when we talk about this particular thing, and also about this Omkara, at that time these words will come. So it is good to have a little clear concept of this, before using the word. Otherwise we sometimes don't get the right meaning. So today we will just want to discuss something about the dialogue from the Prasna Upanishad. Now, here, this basically the Upanishad, it is in prose form, not in poetry form, and that is coming from atSivananda. Now, Pippalada Shakha of the atSivananda, and there are 3 Upanishads in atSivananda. There are 3 Upanishads in atSivananda, which are they? Mundak, Mandukya, and Prasna Upanishad. And all of them have more or less overlapping or a similar message. So when we study them in detail, we will find, that how they have an overlapping message. And all these 3 Upanishads glorify, exemplify, illustrate what is called as a Om. So what is Om and how we worship that, And Om stands for both Saguna Brahman as well as Nirguna Brahman. So whenever we want to worship Saguna Brahman or the Nirguna Brahman, we can take recourse to that recital of Om. Now before we come to that, we will miss out, so let me complete at this stage only. Now when we say that Nirguna Brahma is there, it is having no attribute. And in case of Saguna Brahma, when you say Om represents both Nirguna Brahma as well as Saguna Brahma. Then Saguna Brahma, there is some attribute. And what is the attribute? Sound. So the Brahman first expresses itself as a Nada. And that is called as a Omkara. Nada Brahma. That is how it came into being. Now that Nada Brahma, it has got 3 mantras. Which are they? When you say Om, there is A, U and M. A stands for what? We can say A stands for this physical body, gross body, or waking state. Or waking state. Because this is more in the waking state. Who stands more for dream state or causal? Other subtle body. And Ma stands for causal body. Right? So that is in a D state. So it's a very, very long subject, but just to catch the essence, Swamiji Maharaj, in one of his so many illustrious books and literature he has given, I just picked up one good small essence from that, that when we recite that Om, Om, it has got A, U, N, and 3 mantras. And then there is a point Bindi, that is also called as a Ardha mantra. That represents unmanifested world or Parabrahman. And that is normally called as Turiya Avastha. So we have got the waking state, we have got a dream state, and the sleep state. And in all these 3 states, what doesn't change? The soul, the Atman doesn't change. It is the Atman which is experiencing all these 3 different states. And that is what is called as a Turiya. It is called as a Turiya. So, it is called as a 4th state, not because there is a 4th state actually. There are only 3 states like that, waking state, dream state and sleep state. But because this is common to all, it pervades to all the 3 states. That is why it is called as the 4th, just to make a differentiation. Otherwise, there are only 3 states of a Jivatman, and the soul or the Atman is witness to that. And that's why it's called as a Turi. So that A, U, and M, what we call, are the 3 matras representing gross, subtle, and the causal body at the Desti level and the Samvad level. And that Bindi which you put, that represents Parabrahman or the unmanifested reality. So that is a pratika of that. Swami used to say that whenever we chant Om, so when these three matras come, A, U and M, so we should feel that we are transcending our physical body. Means although I possess the physical body, it is not my essential swarupa. When we chant U, means not to identify, but to transcend. As if we are moving away from the subtle body. Although subtle body is my instrument, it's my tool, it does it, I am the witness of that subtle body. That is when we chant U. And Mo, when we chant Mo, that is at that time we also transcend Kausalya body. That is, we also transcend the ignorance which is a part of our being. And then after some time, Om, 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 when you chant, the space is there between the two chants. So the space between the two chants of the Om represents this or the mantra, or represents that unmanifested, unconditioned, absolute, supreme reality. So I found it very nice to understand that way, that whenever we chant Om, if this is the feeling which we have simultaneously, it makes a much greater impact. We get a much deeper benefit, that these three matras we chant A, U and M, we feel I am transcending these three bodies which I have superimposed upon myself. So one is superimposition and then negation, adhyaropa and apana, like that. So this is the way this Omkara. Yesterday, some of your colleagues, they said that why don't say something about Omkara. So I thought before even we go on this, I thought let me take up this subject. So this little introduction you have made. Now here, again coming back to Prasna Upanishad, Shankaracharya Maharaj says that these Upanishads are there, covered in the Upanishad. But this particular Prasna Upanishad is a more detailed version or explanation of what is told in Mundaka Upanishad. Do you know any mantra or any part of the Mundaka Upanishad which is known to us in every day, or not every day, but in most of the readings we use that part? Mundaka Upanishad, huh? Which one? No. It is a part in Western symbol also. That Satyameva Jayate, that is the teaching in Mundaka Upanishad. But it is Satyameva Jayate Nam Drutam. No Drutam, it is said, So truth alone triumphs, not the untruth. So that's the whole message of that Mundaka Upanishad, which is a part of the so-called secular state, where you don't accept other great religions and everything. So that is part of that. So it is all elaborated in detail in this particular Upanishad. Now here, what happens in Prasna Upanishad is that there are 6 qualified, earnest disciples. They just want to learn about the various aspects of Saguna Brahman, more about Saguna Brahman, this particular Upanishad, more about Prana Tattva, Then they go to the Acharya. And as we know, that whenever there is a desire of attaining this particular Brahmajnana, we should always go to this Acharya. That with the Pranipatena, Pariprashna Sevaya. You have to approach them, and then Pariprashna means genuine inquiry has to be placed, there has to be modesty, and Pariprashna Sevaya. So what is the meaning of service of Gurudev? This is also again a good message Swami Jayantadave Maharaj gave in one talk. That with the Pranipatena, some modesty, unless you really feel that he is somebody who knows higher than you, never learn. Pariprashnena, so genuine question, and Sevaya. So Seva is not just the physical comforts or looking after the immediate need of the Guru, but Seva means to follow the teachings of Guru. That is the real meaning of Seva. Other Seva is fine. That is why Swami also used to say that obedience is higher than reverence. It's a very, very important statement. That we can have reverence for anybody. Oh, is a great man, very knowledgeable man, this, that. But unless and until we take it and make it a part of our living, that reverence doesn't lead us to anywhere. Maybe it's some purpose it will serve. So in that case, following the teachings of Guru, that is the real Seva. Other Seva is also there, but that's secondary. So So like that they also went to this Guru. And there are 6 disciples. One is Sukesha, who is son of Bharadwaja. Then you got Satyakama, who is son of Sivi. You have got Gargya, who is son of Surya. You have got Kausalya, son of Ashwala. And then you have got Bharadwaj, son of Vidarbhi. And Avandi is Karthika. So they will all go to Pippalada with this genuine inquisitiveness to learn. And they go to Guru. And Guru of the earlier times were different from the Guru of modern times. What did he say? That you come here, fine. You can stay here for 1 year. And after that, you will please put your questions. And if I know them, if I know the answer, I will try my best to answer them. In modern times, if somebody goes to college or school and say they will stay for 1 year, just then do the fundamental work and then the syllabus will start. It will never become possible, because you want everything known beforehand, and this AI has made things so difficult these days, that everybody thinks that they have learned everything. And the Ajnana, what we call, is assuming different dimensions. Here the Ajnana, what we call is Swarupa Ajnana, but a different kind of Ajnana is there in our modern education system, where the ill-perceived knowledge, I will call it Ajnana, rather than complete ignorance. And sometimes ill-perceived knowledge is worse than ignorance, because if you are ignorant and if you admit that I don't know, then you will learn. But if you have a notion that I know, then that knowledge becomes more difficult. So first you have to uncondition that and then the knowledge will come. So that is another problem in today's time. But this was the earlier time, Gurukula. So they said, fine, you be here, and do all tapasya, austerity, observe brahmacharya, celibacy, and have deep faith like that. And then they all obeyed, which is very unbecoming in today's time. And then it all started. So after they completed, the whole thing, then this Avandi is one of the 6 disciples. It is also called as Prasna Upanishad, because there are 6 questions. We will just deal mainly with the third Prashna. But just to have a quick reference to that, the first question is, whence are these creatures or the Brahmins? And the rest, Brahmin means some of the Varna, like that. So all the whole creation, the different Varnas, how are they born? And we already answered to that in the beginning only, that Prajapati or Brahma was there. He was assigned the task of creating Srishti, and he had to create these 2 principles, Prana and Rai. So matter is there to create some kind of form, and then there is a life force. So one is called as a Bhogya, one is called as a Bhokta, one is called as a Kshetra, one is called as a Kshatragna. If you go by the Bhagavad Gita 13th chapter, that there is a matter, and in matter there is a life force. And then with that sun, with that Prana goes sun in the day, and with that ray goes the night and the moon, like that. So that's the first question. The second question is asked by the Bhargava, and he says, how many devas support the creatures? So these creatures, his body is there. How many devas means? The devas which control the Indriyas. Devas which control the Indriyas. So how many are there, and who amongst them is greatest? The whole explanation is there, and the whole this particular question is to illustrate the power, glory, and splendor of Prana. So Prana is Varishta, all the Indriyas. The Indriyas are the influence of mind, and it is a Prana which gives life force to all that exists in this individual world and the universe. And Prana is called Varishta. Why? Because what will happen in deep sleep state? What will happen? Even though we say subtle body is not there, but what is still functioning? Prana. So even in all these states, Prana is there. And as is identified when a man leaves the body, we say Prana chale gaye, Prana has moved out. So Prana is something which is there all throughout. So among all the Indriyas also, normally when you got Panchakosha, after now you got Prana, then you got Manomaya. And in many books you find that Prana is secondary to mind like that. But in this particular context of understanding existence and Sagun Brahma, you have to understand that Prana is something which is very, very fundamental. And without that, nothing will happen. We just can't remain alive. The individual existence is this. So Prana is, and you know that whole famous story, all Indriyas went out one after the other, nothing happens, and Prana prepares to go. everything comes to a knot. But that is how the prana is considered as the most fundamental. And then the third question, which is also very important, and that was asked by Kausalya. It's all about the prana, which is again the samvad Brahman part, correct? Now what are his questions? How does it come into, first of all, whence is this prana born? How does it come into this body? The second question. Then how does it abide after it has divided itself into five? So one is chief prana, and the chief prana divides into five sub-prana, super-prana. Correct? How does it go out? And how does it support what is without and what is within? So what is within is adhyatma, and what is without is adhibhautik and adhidevik. So how does it support? Like that. So these are the questions, And here we have to understand one thing, that the Lord, Supreme Paramatman, not only created the whole world or the creation, but it controls that in form of prana. When we say that when Ishvara rules, we call Ishvara. So how does it rule? In form of his prana, as an individual prana or the samashti prana. Right? So when says from prana come, so we may say that the Hiranyagarbha is also called as a prana again. Hiranyagarbha is also sometimes called as a prana. So it created two principles, this prana and ray, and the whole creation came. So prana, whether you call from Hiranyagarbha itself, it has come from the Brahman. So it has come from the Atman. So prana has come from where? Everything has come from Atman. Why prana? Everything has come from Atman. And they say that this Atman and prana is like the human being and the shadow. Human being and the shadow. So wherever we go, shadow will come. So Atman is the cause and prana is the effect. They are inseparable. They will always go together. Correct? And how did it enter into the body? So they say by the mental act it enters the body. Through the karma. Now this is a little difficult to understand. When you come to the fifth question, it is explained that when this life ends, and at that time Jivatma, Jivatma is reflected consciousness, correct? When it wants to leave the body, what will happen? All the senses will come to the mind. All the senses will come to the mind. See, all the senses will come to the mind. And at that time, whatever thought that we entertain will become a determinant for our next birth. Antakaleja mameva smaran muktava kalevaram. That is a slogan in Bhagavad Gita. So whatever we wish, whatever we desire, even if we take a Lord's name, they say, at the time you attain liberation. How can we do that? Only when you have done for the whole life. Otherwise that will never come. So, these senses have come to the mind, and mind with whatever thought, ichha that it has got, it will merge into prana. Prana will merge into udana, will come to udana right now, and then in that form the Jivatma goes to other loka, they explain. So, when the next birth is there, at that time whatever thought in the mind was there at the time of departure, that determines which loka, which body, which we are going to assume. So say, with the intervention or with the support, we may call of the mind, it enters into the body. That's one. Now comes very important thing, that when it comes to the body, how does it function? When it divides into various prana. There are samasti prana and this yashti prana, chief prana. Now how does prana work in body? Everybody knows why, because there is offer that Naivedya Bhagavan. We always offer that pranayas, apanayas, like that we call. So everybody knows that 5 pranas. So what are the 5 pranas? Let us first call apana. So where does it reside in the body? Upon down, but in a very specific way, it dwells in the organs of excretion and generation. So whenever we excrete, this excreta in the liquid form or in the solid form, right? At that time, that is called organs of excretion and organs of generation, which are overlapping many times. So that is where apana resides. Where does prana resides? Prana resides in the eyes, ear, mouth and nose. So in this part. Where Samana resides? Samana resides in the whole body. Now how does it happen? That whenever you take any food, what happens? The food is digested. The food is digested. And as you know, many of you have studied your basic science, that if you have got the proteins, it will break into amino acids. If you have got carbohydrate, it break them into monosaccharides like glucose and fructose and galactose like that. And if you have got fats, it will break down to fatty acids. They are absorbed to the blood, and from circulation of the blood, they go to different organs, different cells of the body, and they provide nourishment. So this is the job which is done by the Samana. That whatever we eat, the essential principles of that, they go to different organs, they go to different cells and provide nutrition. Then comes this Samana, that is true, it goes to different parts of the body. At the same time, in Ayurveda, they explain these 7 flames are there, correct? So what are they? Rasa, Rakta, Mas, Meda, Asti, Majja and Shukra. These are all made out of that Samana. Then comes Vyana. So where is Vyana? In the body. So they say, the Rishi explains, that we understand that the Atman or the soul, what is called, resides in the heart. That's a very commonly explained thing, right? That it resides in the heart. Now, from the heart, 101 nerves emerge. Right? And they are called nadis in Sanskrit. Now, many teachers of this scripture, they say that nadi is not nerves. But that's very difficult. Then we don't know what to think, because the biology that we understand, is the arteries, veins and nerves. We don't know anything beyond that. But they say the nadis are subtle carriers and they carry prana. It is not the nerves like that. But anyway, let us confine to what Swami just said right now. Even if we take them as a nerves, and we know that nervous system, is percolating through the whole body and sometimes blood vessels also. You go deep vascularity, nerves are there. So from the heart, 101 nerves are emanating. Correct? Now, it may be nadi, it may be different, or whatever, but 101 nerves or nadis are emanating. Each one of them splits into 100 again. Each one of them splits into 100. And again, each one of them splits into 72,000. So, if you consider, and in today's time, nobody knows mathematics or calculator. Young child, very small addition, deletion, even calculator. So this they will never do without calculator. So this is 72 crores, 72 lakhs. This is the number of nerves or body which carries prana. And that is Vyana. The whole body innervates. All functions, physiological, respiration, excretion, digestion. You see nervous system, central, peripheral, sympathetic, parasympathetic. Sympathetic very motor. Yes, parasympathetic is different, protective. So all the meditation sadhana they see promote parasympathetic system. Now in modern science talks more about parasympathetic system, that it is something which supports this and that. So everything is basically covered under Vyana. So it pervades the whole body. And then comes the Udana. So where does it live? So out of that 101 nerves which we say, one nerve called Sushumna is there. And the Sushumna moves from bottom to the top. And where does it reside? Everything is covered now. What is left? When we say all this, what is left is Suksha. What is left is Suksha. That's called the Linga Sharira. So this particular Udana resides in the subtle body. Correct? And then all 19 tattvas, what we say, it resides there. It is also said, Udana takes a man to the region of deep sleep. The region of deep sleep. So whenever we just want to sleep, at that time all pranas are working and other pranas will do different function. But the Udana takes a man to sleep. So actually when we enter into sleep, it is the Udana prana which is working. Udana is also responsible for a process very important of swallowing. That is called as a deglutition. know that swallowing is a very important reflex. If any because of some neurological disorders, you are not able to chew and not able to swallow, that's a big problem. It's a very powerful reflex. You know, one of the most powerful eye reflex is there, and agglutination and swallowing reflex is there. So at the time when a person leaves the body, you know, you just put that Ganga, and you know what will happen? If at all that subtle prana is there, you know, it will swallow. It's a very intricate or very subtle kind of reflex. So that is also Udana. So Udana is also playing such an important role. Now where do you find these pranas in the external world? What we say in internal life. So if you talk of the external world, in the sun lies the external prana. Internal prana we say, and whenever sun rises, you know, it is able to impart that prana into the eyes and into the whole body. And again the whole mantra is there, that starting from the east. And as you know, the earth moves from anti-clockwise direction. So first east, then south, then west, and then north. Like the different parts of the earth are supplied by the prana. And earth is something, the goddess of the earth is something which controls apana. Which controls apana at the emotional level. Then akash, the space between the sun and the earth. That is akash. And that is what? That is samana. Where is jnana then? Wind is jnana. All pervading, just as we say so many nerves are there. The wind is pervading very next to akash. That's called jnana. And where is the fire? Where is Udana? In fire. So anywhere outside we see fire, that is basically Udana. And in our body also, that fire is there, which keeps the whole life going. So whenever we say, you know, that this life is not there, that means what happens? And then the body becomes cool. Body becomes cool. And one function which I forgot to mention, which I said earlier in this session also, that Udana, apart from living and all this subtle body, sleep and agglutination, when the human body completes its life, when we complete our life, as I said, all indriyas will come to mind. Mind, with whatever last thoughts it has got, will merge in prana. That prana will unite with Udana. And then that Jivatman goes to different state. So why? Because it has not, all our asanas are not completed, so it has to take a rebirth. But whenever you have got a great sage, realized sage, like Gurudev Swami Shivaji Maharaj, Raman Maharshi, they say that at that time, I don't know the exact English version of that, but they say, Inka Pran Utkram nahi karta hai. It doesn't ascend, it doesn't rise like that, you know. And then again enters the mother love other body. So that prana merges in Samasti prana, this mind merges in Samasti mind, and that Jivatman, if you call that as Jivatman, it merges to already it is identified oneness. So that is the additional function of that particular Udana. So then they say that the learned people who know these pranas, the division, the function in this way, their progeny also, you know, gets the benefit of that, you know, and they also become immortal. So here when you say that if you know the prana and know the food, you become immortal, it is in a sense of relative sense that you attain, you become Hiranyagarbha, you attain that Brahma. That's also a very important thing. The question fourth was that what is in the what are those things which in a man sleep? What are those things in a man which when he is awake? So there is some answer to that. And then this two more questions are there. I think we will leave it right now. That when you meditate on Om, what that particular domain means, you know. So it again explained that those who worship Saguna Brahman can reach to Saguna Brahman, those who worship Nirguna Brahman can attain to that state. And the last question also is very important. We see about this Purusha, 16 Kala. So Purusha is supreme state, you know. And we say Krishna Bhagavan and 16 Kala like that we say. But they say that Purusha can assume the 16 Kalas. But 16 Kalas are not the necessary attributes. They have to be negated. So ultimately that is when the doctrine of negation comes. All that is superimposed. We may be having one more or 16 Kalas. But eventually they have to be negated one after the other by the doctrine of negation. And then we reach that state of supreme divine. And that is why all these great things, Swami Maharaj also said, not this body, not this mind, immortal self you are. Not this body means, body is also containing Atma, but you are not only this body, you are not only this mind, you are not only this intellect, you are not covered here also, but transcending all this, you are Supreme Reality. That is what Gurudeva teaches, that is what our scripture teaches. But in whichever way we understand, whichever way we follow, we must aspire, at least you will understand that we have come from some Supreme Reality, from some Supreme Essence, and that is there in us as a ray of that brilliant light, as a drop of the infinite ocean. And that drop, that ray is not different from that. So I owe similarity in essence, in qualitative terms. And that is how my aspiration, my goal should be to attain that state. There is no pain, there is no sorrow, there is no delusion. And that is the goal of life. Atyantik Sukh, Atyantik Shanti. That all scriptures meant, all Buddhist teaching meant for that. So with these little words I close this sharing and wholeheartedly pray that all aspirants that you are, I am also an aspirant like you, may this knowledge of Brahman arouse in us, not only at the intellectual level, but may it also become a kind of intuitional living experience. Means modern Buddhist ways, we have